at the end, they're like, "Can anybody punt or kick?" And there's a couple guys I went out there to try, and I saw them, and I was like, "That's awful. That's embarrassing. I know I can do better than that." I tried kicking. I kicked like 3 balls, and they were like, "Son, stay after school. Call your mama." So then I went and kicked in front of the varsity coach. I was making 55-yard field goals the first time I ever tried. I don't know if I was ever that passionate about kicking field goals. I was passionate about being the best at something. If you allow yourself to make excuses, you'll make them all the time.
Today's guest is one of the best athletes under pressure in the history of sports. Welcome back to Grateful and Full of Greatness. I'm your host, Mark Glicini. On this podcast, I sit down with guests who, in my opinion, live their lives with the pursuit of greatness in mind. This platform allows me to discuss and to explain the strategies that go into reaching peak performance. This is episode 65. My guest is Stephen Gostkowski, leading the National Football League in scoring for over 4 years and holding the record for most consecutive extra points, scored at 523. Stephen is a top 10 NFL field goal kicker to ever compete. Among the most accurate kickers in NFL history, 86.3%. Over his 15-year career, Stephen won 3 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots, as well as was selected to 4 Pro Bowls. From All-State in 3 sports in high school to being part of the New England Patriots dynasty, Stephen is a winner in every sense of the word. Off the field, he's a husband, father, student, and coach. I'm excited to dive into his story, his perspective on high performance, and how he went from Mississippi to Memphis to Super Bowl champ. Stephen, thanks for coming on.
What's up, my friend? Thanks for having me.
No, I'm excited. And I was listening to a podcast that you were on. I think it's hosted by one of the members of the staff of the Patriots. Maybe you could fill me in on who I'm talking about. But one of the things that you pointed to that I jotted down as a quote to start us off is you said, in my mind, to be a professional athlete at any level, you have to have unwavering confidence. To last a long time, you have to believe in yourself when other people don't. Believe in yourself even when you're not feeling good or doing well. I guess that's where I want to start with you. I said it at the top that you're great under pressure. Have you always had that belief and confidence? And if so, where did it come from?
Well, I mean, I was a wild, hyper kid, crazy all over the place, always causing trouble. I did well in school, but the one thing that could get me hyper focused and laser focused was any kind of sport, anything with the ball. If you could hit it, throw it, catch it, run with it, I wanted to do it, kick it. I would beg my parents to sign me up for every sport. In my mind, I don't know if this is just craziness or whatever, but I thought if I saw somebody do something athletically, in my mind, I thought, oh, I can do that and I could do it better than them. And that is kind of what made me tick growing up. Obviously when you're young and you start out, the intentions probably aren't as good. Like, I want to prove to them I'm the best. And it was, it's a little bit of a fine line of confidence and cockiness, like right along that fine line. Now, you play sports long enough, you get humbled plenty of times to where you have to keep your confidence, but lose the cockiness. But I always had that inner belief in myself that I could do it. I mean, when I was in, first, second, and third grade, I'd be playing street hockey with high schoolers, with my brother and other kids in the neighborhood, always being around older kids that kind of toughen you up and give you a lot of crap, push you down. And then, you have little victories like, oh man, I just beat an 8th grader and I'm in 3rd grade. I mean, I remember little things like they used to do physical competitions in gym when I lived in Buffalo, New York. I was in 3rd grade. I don't know why I remember this because my memory stinks. But they did like broad jump, like a 10-yard sprint. They did like the little pegs. You had to climb up the rope, in the time. And I still remember this day. I had the best scores out of anybody in the school as like a 2nd or 3rd grader, even better than the 5th graders. And like, I mean, I just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. I mean, that obviously had an impact on me in my confidence looking back at it, because um, it's something I still remember. And it's just such a weird thing to, of all the athletic things I've done, for that to stick out in my mind is pretty funny to me. But yeah, I've always had the mindset of wanting to try to figure out how I can master something, be the best at something. And there's been a lot of ups and downs along the way. I mean, the minute you think you have something figured out, then you figure out that you don't.
Yeah.
And that's happened plenty of times in all the different sports. Once I think like, it's just like when you're out on the golf, you're like, I think I figured out my slice, and then you talk about it. What do you do? Slice into the wood. So I've
Yeah.
learned a lot along the way, but that unwavering confidence and belief in myself is something that I've always had and tried to stick to, and wouldn't allow myself to go down a rabbit hole of losing that. I mean, there's been times where it's been chipped, and there's been times where um, I might not be running at 100%, but I've never allowed myself mentally to get into a spot where I didn't believe that I had a chance to win or be the best or make a kick or throw a strike or get a hit. I mean, score a goal. I would never allow myself to think that way.
Love it. And I want to come back to the chip and the confidence, and maybe any times that you come through challenges, and we will get there. I just want to stay at your early childhood for one more question. I read this book a long time ago. It was called Developing Talent in Young People, and it like was looking at Olympians and pro athletes, what's common among them. And one of the things that's common among them is they find success. So like if you're going after something and for a very long time, let's say years, and you never really win something or get acknowledged or recognized, you kind of usually choose a different path. But you finding that early and then probably ticking up all the way through high school was big for you. Another book called Bounce talks about how at one point all like top 10 players in the entire world came from the same street. And it's because they had access to this ping pong table and the gym teacher to teach them and things like that. So I was happy that you went towards playing with the older kids, because that was big for me. I think I got lucky in the fact that I was able to be that fifth grader with the eighth graders, just like your story. You know, Staying at your childhood for a second, could you just kind of describe the household? Maybe like siblings or your relationship with your parents, just to give a setting and an atmosphere of what you were kind of growing up in.
Yeah, so I grew up as a kid. I got mom and dad and an older brother who beat the crap out of me all the time. I mean, he was pretty vicious towards me. I mean, we're good buds now, but I mean, he liked to give me a lot of
Hmm.
you know, it's like bullying. Like, I mean, I was a kid. I probably deserved 90% of it, and I deal with a little bit of that with my two boys. And I told my younger one, I was like, "Don't worry, one day you'll muster the nerve and just pop him right back, and then he'll stop doing it." So, but I think that toughened me up. And then my parents, we had moved around a decent amount. Um, you know, didn't come from a lot of money. Lived in some pretty tough areas, especially when we first moved down to Mississippi. But my parents always made every sacrifice that I could play every sport that I wanted to, and there was no vacations, there was no, um, you know, no. They put everything extra that they had into me playing sports, and then my dad specifically, um, it was just such a great like little league type coach. Um, I was the kind of kid who couldn't wait for him to get home so I could go throw pitches in the front yard. And he always said yes. He would be out there playing street hockey with me and my brother and our friends. So, um, you know, everyone in our family just kind of likes to play, whether it's ping pong, golf, darts, pool. My dad was always very skilled at weird stuff like ping pong and pool and hand-eye coordination stuff. So I think I got a lot of that from him. And he was a great coach too, because he didn't put any pressure on me, but he would never let me make excuses. Or the only time I can remember him getting upset at me was like if I was pitching and the other team put in play, and this I'm talking about like anywhere between like third and sixth, seventh grade. If they put in play and made a bunch of errors, I would throw a fit and I would, you know, I didn't win because this guy can't make a play. So, and that's the only time that he would like get firm with me and be like, look, you can't act that way. You can't show your teammates up. You can't think you're better than the team because that's going to happen to you one day. You just have to be a good teammate. So he taught me a lot of lessons like that. Just, how to compete and how to compete the right way, not just, it's easy for me to point the finger at somebody and say that was your fault, but that's not taking accountability. All you can do is the best you can. And a lot of it, I mean, the same thing goes with like field goal kicking. Like there's the tiniest centimeter of where your foot hits the ball or the way the ball is leaned or where the laces are or how the ball is held can affect whether you make it or miss it. And the easy thing to do is just like point down to the holder or the snapper, but that's just not the right, to me, that's not the right way to do it. Not in a team atmosphere. Even if everybody thinks it's all your fault, I feel like it's important to say, I could have done better. I just think mentally it helps you toughen up. And if you allow yourself to make excuses, you'll make them all the time.
So powerful, Stephen. The only thing I kept writing down was responsibility. I think when it comes to mental game, you're in the response business. You always have the ability to respond. And what you're talking about is this ownership. And the reason why I asked you about the atmosphere early, and you and I are birds of a feather again, because my father, no matter how long I wanted to throw the ball or higher, that's not high enough, throw it hard. I don't know how he doesn't need rotator cuff surgery at this point, right? Because it was similar in that regard. I wanted to see if you were pushed or pulled, right? Because that's something that I really care about. Is somebody driven? Are they called? Are they pushed by their pain? Or they really love doing this? And it was cool to hear that you have that kind of like great energy upbringing, that everything was devoted to sports and you didn't have this like pressure put on you at a very young age. And just staying for a beat on the baseball front, because I read that it was soccer and baseball, if that's correct for you.
Yep.
But I think everything that I was listening to and reading it was baseball for you. Well, when did it stop being baseball for you, and when did it become field goal kicking?
Well, I played, you know, I was always baseball, and baseball is probably what I stuck out the most. Like, I could throw a lot harder than people. I could hit it farther than people, and I just kind of like always excelled in baseball from a young age. Played up. This is the emergence of travel baseball, where there was only one good travel baseball team, not 10,000 of them. And then I played a little bit of hockey, and then we moved down to Mississippi, and there was no hockey, so my parents put me in soccer. So then it was baseball, soccer, all the way through. I didn't make my first travel soccer team that I tried out for, but I didn't give up. And then I just played rec for a year and then made it the next year. So that was a good learning experience. But baseball is I just felt so good. I felt so like powerful and control. I felt like dominant when I was out there pitching. And I had a good baseball career. We won the state championship my senior year in high school. Luckily I was good enough to garner a lot of attention collegiately for baseball because that was my number one goal at the time. I got into field goal kicking almost by accident because I went out for high school football as a ninth grader just so I could have my last two periods of the day be like a gym where you just go work out instead of study hall because I can't sit still, or at least back then I couldn't. Like I was like, I can't sit in study hall for 2 hours. Like I'll go crazy. I mean, I would get my homework done in like 20 minutes just so I could go do something. So I went out for ninth grade football. I mean, I played some little league football and pee wee football, but literally I just went out just because soccer was a winter sport, baseball was a spring sport. So I couldn't take the whatever it's called, like football fitness or whatever. So I got in that and then just went out for tryouts or workouts and, they see how fast you can run, jump, all that stuff, see if you can catch. They have you tackle some dummies, push some pads, and at the end, they're like, can anybody punt or kick? And there's a couple of guys I went out there to try. And I saw them and I was like, that's awful. That's embarrassing. I know I can do better than that. And I knew, so like, by the time I was in ninth grade, I mean, when I was like, I'd play soccer, I was probably 14, about to turn 15. Like I would score from midfield in soccer games, or if I took the goal
Mm.
kick, I could kick the goal kick all the way to the other goalie's box. Like I always knew I'd kick a ball far and hard. I didn't know where the hell it was going at that age. But heaven forbid I put one on target in soccer, it was going to be a goal. I mean, I've missed the net by 1,000 feet 100 times, but I always kept shooting. So I tried out. I tried kicking. I kicked like 3 balls, and they were like, "Son, stay after school. Call your mama." So then I went and kicked in front of the varsity coach. I was making 55-yard field goals the first time I ever tried, or at least I was getting them far enough to make 55-yard field goals. And I got moved up to varsity and played in the varsity game as a freshman that next week. So I didn't really want to do it. I mean, of course, I love football. I love football. Everybody loves football. But baseball and soccer are my number ones. I just went out just so I could work out, and then ended up turning into something that got me a lot of attention, a lot of notoriety. It was really cool to be. It was a big deal to be a freshman on the varsity team. I didn't start every game my freshman year, but it was still pretty cool. And then so I just kept sticking with football because I was just so naturally talented at kicking. And that's kind of why I got into it, just because it just happened for me so naturally. I mean, I know I'd played a ton of other sports along the way. Um, but in baseball, there was, there's thousands of guys across the country that were probably could throw the ball as hard as me. There was, cut that number by, who knows, that could kick the ball as far as me.
Mm.
So, I'd go to baseball tournaments. I was like, well, that guy can throw as hard as me. Or I'd go to, that guy can hit the ball as far as me. And like I would go to these showcases, and I'd see all these guys and like, well, they're better than me. They're, like I still thought I was good, but I never felt until I got maybe to the NFL that anybody could kick the ball better than me.
Amazing. Yeah.
Um, and it didn't mean
There,
I was always right. I mean, I had some pretty big struggles along the way. I mean, like I said, you will always get humbled, especially in that position. But that was my belief at the time, and we were all kind of, you know, having a teenage son myself. I think it's just ingrained in your DNA to be a little bit of a prick when you're in high school.
yeah. Well,
At least in your self belief.
this episode is brought to you by Thorne Health Tech. Which company do you trust when it comes to your health? Thorne Health Tech provides over 190 supplements and products necessary to avoid deficiencies and optimize mental acuity, holistic health, speed, strength, and conditioning. For years, I've taken their amino complex, whey protein, and elite multi AM and PM vitamins. I'm proud to represent Thorne. Why? Because their quality of products is the highest, as well as purity and potency of every supplement. They're backed by the Mayo Clinic. The raw materials that go into the supplements are NSF certified for sport, as well as tested and retested to meet Olympic standards. So if you're looking to optimize your performance and get to the next level, whether it's to meet your protein thresholds or just optimize holistically, trust Thorne. To get started, enter your email and enjoy 25% off at thorne.com/you/Mark Glicini. That's thorne.com/you/Mark Glicini. Enjoy. Now, back to the episode. So since you brought it up, 2 or 3 times now, that humbled side of things, I guess that's where I will go next. For the young athlete that's listening, I just want to pull out of your answer the fact that you're getting cut from soccer teams, and then here's a guy who goes on to be one of the best kickers that ever played. And it's like, yes, it's a different sport, but it's just that stickability that I love. And there's articles about this. There's books about this. Most famously put forward by Cal Newport, who says, "Be so good they can't ignore you." So he's all about stop following your passion. That's bad advice. And I come from the field that I think you should have both. right? Where, passion will allow you to stick to something for a very, very long time, but it would be really nice if you could be skilled at it as well. So I think that's what started to happen for you
Well, I'll
on
say
the field
this
goal kicking front.
along those lines. Um, I don't know if I was ever that passionate about kicking field goals. I was passionate about being the best at something. And I've had this conversation with people before. I was always talented. I always worked hard, but it was not until college to where I became like obsessed with figuring out how to perfect it. Like I would always go out and kick 200 kicks or like in practice and kick the whole time that the team was practicing, which probably, like if you look at the sports science behind it, like there's a law of diminishing returns. Like you can only do something with an accuracy for so long before you start to see it go the other way. I learned how to work smarter. I really learned how to work and put my all into something. Because I honestly, I got sick of feeling crappy about myself when I screwed up when it came to football. Like it was weird. Like football is crazy. It can make you feel like you're on top of the world. It can make you feel like you're at the bottom of a pit because I don't think there's any other team sport like football to where every play matters, every game matters. Um, you know, baseball and soccer, it's like go get them next time kind of thing. You don't really get that in football, like especially at a kicking position like punter, snapper, or kicker, to where you're only a few bad plays at the wrong time away from people losing their confidence in you and saying we got to find somebody else. And we've all seen it 10 million times in high school, college, NFL. So I got obsessed with trying to master it. That's where my passion was, is trying to find something, figure out and master it. And of course I like being good at it, but you know, you held a gun to my head. Would you rather play professional baseball or be a professional field goal kicker? I probably would have said professional baseball. But my curveball stopped curving and my kick stopped curving. So I
Yeah.
kind of but I was lucky enough to do a bunch of different sports because I learned so much along the way, mentally, how to deal with. Um, there's a lot of parallels with baseball to me because, like, let's say you're a starting pitcher. Well, you go out there, you have a bad game. You gotta sit on that all week until you get another chance.
Hmm. Hmm.
To pitch. I mean, in high school, like you play it all. I played center field, and I got the. It didn't bother me as much in high school because I go out, hit a home run the next day, or make a great play in the outfield. When I got to college and I just pitched, if I didn't do well that week, I had to sit there and watch everyone else play 4 or 5 games, so I got a chance to do it again. So I
Mm.
think that helped me out a lot with football. And then I always gravitated towards being in a spot where the pressure was high, like bases loaded, full count, like that got my juices going, or a kick in the fourth quarter to tie the game or to win the game. Like to me, that was so easy to focus in those moments because it was exciting.
Hmm.
It's all the dull moments in between where my ADD would kick in and I would have a hard time to focus. So I always gravitated towards like that. I mean, anytime a coach said, "Who wants to take this shot? Who wants to do this?" I had my hand up every time, wanting to do it, whether I made it or not. I would keep trying it, and in my mind, I would make every shot that I took. Or
So was that natural for you, or do you feel like that was something that grew over time?
I mean, it definitely grew over time, but I think it was pretty natural to begin with. Like, it was just the kid in me, like someone telling me I can't do it. Like, well, you couldn't tell me when it came to sports, like you couldn't tell me that I couldn't do it. I wanted to
Hmm.
try, and I wanted to prove to everybody that I could do it. And I was just hyper competitive, um, along the way. I mean, it takes a lot of humbling to find a way to balance that to where,
Hmm.
like, my friends would get pissed at me because if they beat me in ping pong, I would want to play them until I beat them 5 times. And they'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, let's go. You got beat, like, so it took me a while to have to get out of that mentality of
Sure.
like, I couldn't lose. I mean, probably a little immature, but that's just the way I was wired growing up.
Well, looking at the mentality, right? So if there's a 5 foot putt in golf for par versus birdie, you're more likely to make it if it's for par because the threat of loss is more powerful than the opportunity to gain. When it comes to the baseball analogy that you were talking about, I wanted to get to this point about field goal kicking, something that makes a task or a craft mentally tough is time between tasks, right? So Marcus Aurelius said, it's not good or bad, it's thinking that makes it so, right? If you have more time to think, and that's why golf might be the most mentally tough sport. I know it's not mixed martial arts where you're getting punched in the face, but you're playing a sport for over 4 hours and hitting the ball for 8.5 minutes. Right. So there's a lot of time to be thinking inside
Yeah.
of that. And that's why you hear a lot of like talk to yourself, don't listen to yourself inside of sport. Um, I think that's kind of what you were talking about in terms of the baseball analogy to what you were doing in field
Yes,
goal
the
kicking.
hardest thing about kicking is in my personal opinion, number one is you cannot create your own opportunities. You're only as good as the opportunities you get. So um, that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow when you're ultra competitive because anytime I messed up, I couldn't wait to get out there to make the wrong right. And
Right.
times where you don't get that opportunity, um, it can drive you insane. And then
Mm.
two, there's games where I show up and I'm a sniper today. I couldn't miss if I tried, and you don't get any opportunities. And then there's times where, oh man, I feel like crap today. I feel off. I don't know what's going on. I slept like crap. My mind's not in the right place, and then
Yeah, it's
you're
six
called on
opportunity.
to win the game. So those things can be definitely maddening, and I think it's just a constant battle to focus and reinvent ways to keep it fresh. I mean, I've kicked the ball, a million times in my life. Uh, you've got to be very focused to
Right.
do well because it doesn't take
Right.
much to miss. And these guys that do it, it's one of the easiest jobs when you're good at it and everything's going well. It's one of the
So
toughest jobs in sports, I think, when you're doing that.
because you don't have that opportunity. You have to just wait. You have to wait and wait. Life in 3 words is opportunities, choices, consequences, and you're only in control of the choices, right?
Yep.
But like opportunities are that's why the preparation side of it, the competence side of it, the increasing your readiness side of it is because you got to be prepared for that opportunity when it comes. Going into your football career, let's just dive right into it. An NFL scout asked me to ask you this question. Um, is there a difference between a game winner versus a regular opportunity for you and how you prepare, how you go about it? Or do you see those things as the same? And if there's any specific thing that comes to mind?
I would say for me personally, my most nerve-wracking kick of any game would be the first one. And that was kind of one of the few hurdles that I had a hard time shaking because once the game like once the game declares itself or once you see that first kick go through, I feel like the game is easy.
Mm.
And sometimes I felt like I put so much pressure on myself to be perfect that like if I did mess up, then it felt like the pressure was off and I could go into attack mode. To me, at the end of the games, that was fun. And that was when you could really prove yourself as a competitor, show your mental toughness. Um, you know, it's that's your only way to show like your worth, to the guys that are out there, getting their head beats in play after play. And then that's when you hear the guys like, I would never want your position. I would never be able to deal with it. And, these are
Mm.
some of the toughest guys you've ever met in your life. And you're like, hey, what you'd be able to if you were good at it. And um,
Yeah.
so to me, it was more nerve wracking than not knowing, like, is my first kick going to be a 25 yarder? Is it going to be a 55 yarder? Is it going to be into the wind? Like, those are the things that are harder than once a game declares itself and that is a close game. I was always better at being able to calm myself down than get myself going. So sometimes, like if I wasn't feeling too hot in the first kick of the game, it would almost be like I really don't know if this is going to go in. And then there are games where my mindset was, I can't miss. So,
Got it.
but for the most part, I mean, I'd say 90% of the time, my mindset was, I'm not going to miss. If there
Yeah.
was any doubt, it was usually the first kick of the game. That to me, that was the most nerve wracking one.
Well, I could pull this up because I was just giving a presentation and showing it over the video. This is the Yerkees Dotson curve from 1908. Your performance is going to happen to be highest at the right level of arousal or energy, and that's where your growth and learning and your focus. And if you're too low on it, you're indifferent or you're bored. And if you're too high, you're panic and you're too anxious. And what I heard you say is you're that beginning, maybe you need to get going or come back down just to get in the right frame of mind.
Sometimes I would need to get smacked in the face to wake up a little bit, I'd say. But I just think that's, you know, the tough part of the position because you're literally doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and
Yeah.
finding ways to keep it fresh or keep your when I was fully focused, my confidence was unshat. Like,
Okay, so Stephen, how did you do that? Right? Because you've said
well,
multiple times.
sometimes I put myself in situations where I had no choice because it was like life or death. Like, oh crap, I never really thought about these things, but it's to be true. Like, you miss too many kicks, you don't have a job anymore.
Hmm.
Just professionally, like the the difference between playing in college at my position and professionally is there's so much more at stake, to where if you can't handle the pressure of getting paid a lot of money, or um, people depending on you in a multi-billion-dollar business, then it's going to be tough for you, no matter how talented you are. It's all got to be in between the ears. And a lot of my misses probably did come from being unfocused and bored, and on that lower end of the your little scale.
Yeah.
But what was the scale called?
Yerkees Dotson curve.
Yeah, we all know about that.
So here's the I heard a lot of people asking you. It seemed like everybody loves asking you, what was it like stepping into the role after Adam Vinatieri? But one of the things that I grabbed from your story, which I found even more fascinating to me, is you beat out a veteran in Grammatica, is that right? During your kind of like rookie. So, there's always these opportunities that might not become that 15-year. You don't even have a chance to be 1 year, right? Unless you beat out Grammatica. Could you take us inside that story on how you were able to, yeah, you were selected and you got the opportunity now, but you took the most of the opportunity.
For sure. And you know, I think I always thought I wanted to be a professional athlete, but I really never thought about it for the NFL until I got invited to the Senior Bowl my senior year. And then I got drafted, and I was working my tail off. I was training for football while finishing up my senior year in baseball while trying to graduate. So I'd go from baseball practice to go train for football and then do workouts with NFL coaches. And then when I got drafted, I mean, it was a pretty cool moment. I never, I think throughout my life, I never, whatever milestone I hit, whether it was an award or a championship with a team or coming through in a big spot, I never really took time to congratulate myself. It was always like, so this happened, cool, what next? I mean, of course I went out and like partied and had a good time with my friends and my girlfriend after I got drafted, but still in the back of my mind was like, I haven't accomplished anything yet. So when it came to replacing Adam, I mean, the media and the fans and stuff made it a lot bigger of a deal than I ever did, or what Coach Belichick and the staff ever did. They told me is like, you don't have to do anything different than what you can do. So that's all we want you to worry about and control. So that made it kind of easy for me. And I was never going to let other people's feelings of me get in the way of realizing my dream, no matter how bad. I mean, people wanted me to fail, because I was coming in after one of the most liked people in the organization. I think he was a fan favorite. So it took a while to win people over, and but that wasn't going to get in the way of me doing well. I wasn't going to let something like that was so out of my control affect the way that I worked. And
Stephen, I mean, you water it down, but it's so impressive. And I hope that you do smell the roses now on how you were able to not be overshadowed, but step into that light. It's pretty impressive,
It's fun,
no?
it's fun to look back and think about it. But at the time, I was a 21-year-old naive kid who you couldn't tell. Like, I was probably too dumb to realize how big of a deal it was at the time. So just kind of like putting the blinders on, focusing on what I can control. And I was so fortunate to go in that organization because I could just look two lockers over and see a Tom Brady or a Teddy Bruschi or all these guys who had been multiple time champions that were famous, that were very highly successful, and just see how they never talked about any of that stuff. You would never hear those guys talk about their all they've done. That's their all they focused on is what they could do this year, and it
Mm,
was very powerful. And all I had to do was sit back and watch how these guys worked and how they took care of themselves, took care of their body, paid attention to detail, how they took every practice seriously. So it was, I mean, it had to be the easiest place for me to fall in line to know what the expectations were. And it was good that they met with the expectations I have for myself. And then going
mm.
against Grammatica, I mean, it was great competition. We both had an unbelievable training camp. He was just at the end of his career. A couple injuries popped up. Either one of us could have won that job. I probably had the inside track because they invested more into me with a draft pick. But we both made each other better that spring or the summer in training camp. I mean, they would have a chart in the Boston Globe of every one of our kicks every day in training camp because
Wow.
because that's how stuck they were on the, how bad will the Patriots suck now that they got rid of Vinatieri.
Uh,
Um, so it was looking back at it, it was pretty cool. I mean, the attention it got old after a while. I
sure.
didn't go looking for it. But yeah, competing
So
against
rather than Grammatica's age or injury, what do you think? Yes, you were drafted, but what were the intangibles or tangibles that you had that you would point to at that summer?
I mean, I wanted to. I mean, my first goal was just to make the team, and
Mhm.
I just fell in line with what the coaches said, what my teammates said. Just hey, just string together days consistently. Just you can't be good one day and terrible the next. You got to bring it every day. And was I perfect? No, but did I have the right mentality? Was I focused on getting better every day? Um, it's so cliche, but all the coaches will tell you if you don't do it in practice, they'll have a hard time sending you out there to do it in the game. So,
Right.
I mean, those 8 to 10, I would probably kick, 200 kicks in practice a day, but there's only about 8 of them that really mattered, which is the ones with the team that they chart. So getting used to the build up, um,
Mm.
and getting used to the pressure, and it's intimidating to have Bill Belichick standing a foot away from you, knowing that he's judging every kick that you have, and they're watching you intently because you're a rookie. They don't know you yet. Um, but that stuff never really bothered me, or I wouldn't allow it to get to me. If I had a bad day, one of the vets was talking crap, it might bother me a little bit, but I got over that stuff pretty quickly.
There's an NBA skills coach, Drew Hanlon, who worked with, I don't know if he still does, but the 3 out of the 5 top NBA point scorers, Bradley Beal, Joel Embiid, Tatum from Boston. And one of his famous quotes that I grabbed was, a skill is not truly acquired until it holds up under pressure. And I love that you take those 200, but like the 8 that really matter, and how can you go through the process, routine, or habit, which is where I want to point to, Stephen. If you had to reflect and cultivate awareness on the routine, the habit, or the process that allowed you to get ready for that build up in the moment, all right, the opportunity's on. How are you able to step into that moment?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, to me, kicking when I figured it out, it was more of a timing and rhythm thing. So there was definitely a routine behind it. I mean, there's a reason why kickers try to have the same steps every time. Some of it has to do with like your angle and like the science behind it, but if you practice it like a dance and you have the same timing every time, it's like clockwork when you get out there. You don't have to think. So you do your thinking throughout the week, and then you just let your talents take over in the game. And I had to train my mind a little bit with it because, you know, you learn through screwing up to where maybe I have too many thoughts in my head. So once I learned to simplify it and learn to just I would just usually give myself one reminder, like, hey, slow down, or hey, keep your head down. Just you can't go out there over a kick or a shot in golf and have 10,000 different thoughts. But it takes a lot of confidence and a lot of training to get to where you can do that. And then when I changed my mindset of I'm going to go out there to make the kick, and then instead of I'm going out there to not screw up. That
Right.
was probably where I took my biggest leaps and bounds. I don't really remember when that was. Probably sometime in college, but when I started, treating myself as a weapon instead of a liability, because a lot of people treat our position as a liability, as someone they can't trust, and
That is extremely powerful. A
that's
weapon
kind
over.
of
I've
the
never.
mentality
That's
that I wanted to get to, and that's kind of the thought processes I had along the way.
Stephen. That's brilliant. Timing and rhythm. Listened to a book called Golf in the Kingdom, and it was all about that, like the spiritual element, the feel side of it, rather than this thought, right? So the idea is that action replaces thought. And when it comes to teaching the sports psychology of it, it's like your body language, your focus, and your self-talk is going to get you into that present moment. And I just love that you have that routine. That yes, there's this science to it, right? About angles and measurements, how far away from the ball and all of that. But then I love how you brought in dance, which is there's more of a feel and art to that. And you keep saying this word mentality, right? Whether you mean to or not, it's like, what's your mentality? It's to get better. What's your mentality that that I'm a weapon rather than a liability? Let me go to the thing that people can relate to, pain, setback, and how you bounce back. As I counted, I think it was 392 field goals made out of 454 attempts. You only missed 62. Three of those were in Super Bowls.
Yep.
How did you bounce back from that? Like that's like the weight of the world. What did you do?
Yeah, I mean, those were some tough moments personally. You know, your whole career, um, and I mean, I still have a very good playoff percentage. Um, the Your whole career, that's what's so crazy about football. Like it can all come down to one moment. Um, some of the stuff is out of your control. Some of it is in your control. Maybe I think the times I may have struggled towards end of my career, looking back at it, is I probably put too much pressure on myself to be perfect instead of, hey, you're good, you're an all-star, you are a big reason your team's here. Um, Go out there and dominate. And I think part of that routine that's tough is you play every week until you get to the Super Bowl, and then you have to wait 2 weeks, and then there's the hard part is there's no escaping the thought of the super. Like there's no normalcy. There's no you're in the city, in the hotel, where I could usually go home to my wife and kids, or I could turn the TV on and watch a show and get my brain off of it. Like the Super Bowl week, like that's all you're thinking about, and it's like the biggest week of your life. And I would probably say I wish I wouldn't have pressed so hard, and then that's really tough because you have a miss in one game, and then those feelings don't really come back up until you get to the next Super Bowl. I mean, I was very fortunate to play in 6 Super Bowls. Um,
Amazing.
it was a blessing. It was a blessing. I learned more from my screw ups than I did my doing well. But that's the beauty of a team sport. A day that I might not be on, the team can pick you up, or the times that the offense struggles, I might have to be called on to kick 5 field goals, and I'm there to step up for them. Like, if you think you can do it all alone and go at it all alone, you're wrong. Like, if you ask the, and I was always able to bounce back from every one of them. Even if I missed one, I still would come back and make the next one. And I was very fortunate. I was talking about this the other day. Someone asked me about what my most memorable kick was, and it was the kick to put us up by 10 with a minute left in the Super Bowl against the Rams.
Against the Rams.
I mean, that kick meant the world to me. I mean, it made me feel like I lost 100 pounds in one instance, because I wanted so hard, so badly I kept saying, I want my opportunity to make a mark on this dynasty or make a mark on my career, because I need something to bounce me back from, a couple of the misses or a couple of the setbacks that I had. And I was just like begging and praying for the opportunity. It's kind of a selfish way of thinking. I didn't like thinking that way, but to have that opportunity, it wasn't quite a game winner, but it was a game sealer. And to be able to have that opportunity and to make it, I mean, that was like a culmination of my life's work. I mean, I felt amazing with that, making that kick and us winning that way. I mean, to me, it felt just as good as a game winner because it was in the Super Bowl. Who knows what would have happened if I would have missed that kick? They could have gone down, scored a touchdown, tied it up, and then it's a complete new ball game. It wasn't the sexiest kick, but to me, it was, forever, like probably my proudest moment kicking, or my career for sure.
I love that. You stopped and smelled the roses there for 5 seconds of your life. Thank you so much for doing that. One of the things that comes to mind for me, and I've been thinking deeply about this, and I think this is a good time to talk about it, is when you're looking for the answer to certain things, it usually comes at the polarity, right? So what I mean by that is you have to compete and you have to cooperate. You have to get yourself going, but also relax. You have to attach to the team, but also be your authentic self, right? So you see that it's not just one thing, right? And when you said I was being selfish, like, Steven, you gotta be, man. You have to focus on yourself and you have to pour into the team. So it's like this back and forth. And I think that's what makes competing, coaching, leading, parenting. It's like, how hard should it be on your kids, Steven? Right? Like, it's all like an art, right? And I think what I've said to you before on a call off this was sciences matter, psychology is what matters. And I think when you talk about what matters, it's a nuanced conversation. And that's why I'm trying to follow you as best as I can. Let me go into the fact that you're playing such an individualized position for a dynasty, okay? And that is attachment versus authenticity. And I've heard leadership described as vision, character, legacy. So, or vision, culture, legacy, depending on if it's the individual or if it's the team. And character is the thread that weaves into the fabric of the culture, and you could tell if it's the wrong thread, right? We don't need that person on the team. They're being a disease or a cancer to what we have going on here. So, if you want to go into a specific story, please do. But what was that like, balancing your authentic individuality as a field goal kicker versus this attached teammate?
Well, I mean, part of what made me tick is I always wanted to prove that I was more than just a field goal kicker. Like, I wanted to be respected as an athlete amongst the best athletes in the world. So like when we did off-season training, I'd work out with, guys in regular positions like the quarterbacks or like the receivers or tight ends, and I would try to compete with them. Like, I wanted to be looked at as not just someone who trots out there and kicks the ball five to 10 times a game. Like, so that's probably where my drive came from, was I wanted to be, like I said before, I want to be looked at as an asset instead of a liability. So I think that's probably where a lot of my motivation came from, as far as as it relates to football. So that was kind of like the little thorn in my side that always just kept me, like, the chip on my shoulder a little bit, to like constantly have to prove myself.
Did I read a story that you chased somebody down and you made a great tackle? That was like a really defining moment, or no, nothing comes to mind like that. It
I
was
mean,
like in a
I had like at least like 25, 26 tackles in my career.
see, there you go. Chalk that up. I
I
don't know
did
why we're
check.
not
Well, I think
talking
that
about
was in
that.
high school. There was a guy who was like going to a big time school. He was like Mr. Football, and I ran him down or something like that.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Whoop. For the last several years, I have not taken this off my wrist. Okay, maybe I have, but it was just to change the colors. I truly trust Whoop. It's a wearable that lets me know about my resting heart rate variability, respiratory rate, and so much more. I wake up in either the green, yellow, or red, and I know if I should prioritize training and working out harder or I need to prioritize recovery. I was always looking for ways to optimize and take my performance and training to the next level. Whoops helped me do that. If you're looking to get started, here's a free wristband and a free first month. And if you don't like it, you can return it at no cost. All you have to do is go to the following: join.whoop.com/MGPP. That's join.whoop.com/MGPP. Mark Glicini Peak Performance, my clients, I trust Whoop. You should too. Enjoy. Let me know how you get on. Now, back to the episode. The number one compliment in sports psychology is that person's evolved. It's like they're not just that, they've evolved themselves to become more, not just as an athlete, but like what do they do for the team? Can they do multiple things? Are they reliable? Are they versatile? That sort of thing. That's evolved, and we want to become that outside of athletics as well. Can I probe one more time inside that dynasty of the Patriots? Whether you want to talk about a specific moment or interaction with Bill Belichick or Tom Brady or any of those other key figures, I'm sure those guys were pouring into you, not just making jokes about you at practice. But is there anything else that comes to mind as like defining moment? Go ahead.
Yeah, we had the Patriots dynasty. I mean, it's just looking back, it's so unreal. We had the minus one player who I'm sure everyone knows who I'm talking about. Everybody else was just amazing people, smart, funny, competitive as hell. There was just so many examples of people to look towards, to where you could find out the right way to do it, whether it be Tom, Julian, Teddy Bruschi, Mike Vrabel, Lonnie Paxton, Troy Brown, Matthew Slater, Nate Ebner. I mean, there were so many people to learn from by just observing. And I guess one of the big benefits of being a specialist is you have a lot of time to observe. So you get to see so many people and how they do things. And hey, I like the way this guy did this. I don't like the way this guy acted. But everyone expected to win. They expected to do their job. And seeing how clutch all these guys were and how calm and cool and collected they were under pressure. People were always asking about like, well, what was the locker room like at halftime of the comeback versus the Falcons? I mean, it was pretty, for being down 28-3 or whatever we were, it was pretty calm. And, it was pretty, it wasn't like the movies where you see the one guy get up on the table and start yelling at everybody to get him going. There were some times where, there may have been a little rah-rah stuff, but it was just so business-like, and so like everybody was so laser focused on doing whatever it took to win. And there were very few times where someone's individual goals got ahead of the team goals. And that's what I appreciate the most about it. And that's kind of why I said I felt a little bit selfish thinking that way, because I was making it more about me than the team. And I think by making it more about me, I might have been pressing or trying to. Like, you can't kick a game-winning field goal the first kick of the Super Bowl. It doesn't work out that way. Like, I was at my best when I took it one play at a time, focus, whatever happens, let it go, repeat, get back in my zone. So I would say when it came to stuff like that, like towards the end of my career, when I started thinking about like my legacy or can I please make that mark? Those were thoughts that I was having. I didn't necessarily like that I was having those thoughts, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, if I was to put a positive spin on it, and we looked at it from the role of attention or focus, and we looked at the aperture or lens, complexity and anxiety are the same thing. So when we start to feel too much overwhelm, right, to be engulfed with too much, right, that comes from complexity and anxiety. So the positive spin on focusing on yourself is just closing the aperture, right? Not allowing, you know how you went like this and you said blinders on early on in your career? Like that was focus. So it had to do with like the lens that you were creating more so than the overarching mindset of Steven's only thinking about himself always. It was just like kind of locking it down. So out of the things that you did observe, because you brought that up a few times, I can't remember the name of this book that was introduced to me. I had my uh, postgraduate high school economics teacher and most winning lacrosse coach, at the prep school level. He brought up a book that was written by a mother and a father about how more than anything else, students observe their teachers. They just observe, right? And like, there's a principle that kids won't always listen to what the parents say, but they will never fail at becoming who they are. It's a pretty cool way of like observation is like everything. And you had a lot of role models. Rather than just vague brushing it, could you point to what you did observe? Like you just named like 12 people. Like
Yeah.
what did they specifically do? Like detail wise.
Well, I'd say some of the things that stuck out was probably competitive stamina. Um, I mean, it was such a well-oiled machine. I mean, the year we went undefeated and lost in the Super Bowl, we were beating teams by 20 to 30 points every week, which is unheard of in the NFL. Like, whatever, 75% of the games are one score games. And we were just
Mm,
absolutely murdering people. And it was almost like going back to high school where you're playing against the small school. And I mean, it was insane. And then we would show up the next day and you would think that everyone would be happy, content, and give themselves a pat on the back. And it was the exact opposite, to where the only plays that Bill would show was the bad ones the next day. So even in a time where we were so close to being the best team to ever play in the history of NFL, like we didn't finish the job, um, he was still on a war path to get better. And there wasn't much better that we could have ever gotten. I mean, we had some pretty close to perfect games that year against great teams. And we
mm,
even pulled some games out of our butt and
mm,
comebacks to finish the season. And it was literally the most fun season ever until the last game.
mm,
Just the the quiet confidence that the Tom Brady's had, the Teddy Bruschi's had, the Vince Wilforks, the belief in themselves, and the accountability factor was huge in New England. There was no, like, we did our job, but you didn't do your job. Everybody
mm.
after every game was always on like it was beaten into your head. How could I get better? The offense scores 40 points. Well, maybe we could have gotten better on third down. Maybe we could have got better in the red zone. The kickoff team gave up a little too many yards. Maybe I kick the ball a little higher. Maybe I kick it farther in the corner. Um, it was just, and everybody was always on the same page that it was just, it's amazing. And I think you have to have some winning, and you have to have some, something when to be treated, I don't want to say treated, but like, you know, to go so far every year, and it was either like full ecstasy or it was like getting in a car wreck almost every year in my career. So we either won the Super Bowl and it was like the greatest day of your life, or you got so close but no cigar. Like, I think I played in 10 or 11 AFC championships. So just like the farther you go and you know, the more of a price you pay, just it's more rewarding when you do well, but also it hurts like hell when you do bad. Um, so just the way guys could come back after we lost the Super Bowl to the Eagles and then win it the next year when everyone thought the dynasty was over, or how we could lose an AFC Championship game and come back and make it again the next year and win it. I mean, it's just there's so many hundreds and hundreds of examples. I would just say just the focus on winning, the attention to detail, the accountability factor, and the mental stamina is something that it's unparalleled in today's game. I mean, the Chiefs are doing it right now as we speak. They've got something special going on, and when everyone buys in and everyone does it, and you get the results to do it, it's very very fun to be a part of. And I could see why everybody hated us for a long time, because watching the Chiefs play, you're like, man, I hope they lose sometimes. But that's, I mean, that's what was going on with the Patriots. I mean, it was a well-oiled machine, and it was more of a surprise when someone didn't make the play, or we did lose, than if we, because you know, how many times have we seen Tom Brady at the end of the game when we're losing the game-winning drive? I mean, it happened so many times that you just come to
Right.
expect it to happen. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's just too many to count to where you can pinpoint it on one thing. But it was a full team collaborative effort, and the best players and the most successful players lived it out, like the Tom Brady
Yeah.
Edelmans, and they never acted like they were better than anybody, which, we all know Tom Brady was better than everybody. So he could have, there's been plenty of times where he could have made it about himself, and he always put the team first.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing is standard. I knew you would say the expectation. The There's a faith element to expectation. Faith acronym, feeling as if the thing has happened already. Feeling as if the thing has happened, and you knew that in the last minute drive or so. Especially if the game was on your foot. Something you said early on was competitive stamina. That's a pretty cool idea. Like the fact that you guys stayed consistently having humility, which is what I don't know is more important than what I do know. And having that humble nature, but also that self belief. Again, there comes that balance again of you need to have both of those things. And what I'm always encouraging, especially the younger athlete, is the easiest way to prove is to improve. Right. So if you just keep improving, you will prove one day. I want to be conscious of your time, so I'll wrap it up with two more things, and I'll be kind of roller coaster oriented. I'm going to go down before I come back up, and that is you played for 15 years. Every single person I try to have on here is consistent, and they have that longevity of consistency, which is really awesome. Going down for a second is, when did you feel that loss of power, accuracy, or it factor later on in your career? When did you feel, like you said, the pressure to be perfect was so high and then you were pressing too hard? When did these certain things happen in your career, and how were you navigating them?
Yeah, I mean, it almost kind of snowballed the last couple years with New England. I started having really bad hip problems, really bad knee problems. The pressures of being a professional athlete, especially in a sport like football, where they're always looking for someone younger, cheaper. Um, there's some things where I probably should have gone and gotten them checked out and taken care of earlier in my career, but the fear of getting cut or replaced, and my ego of I can power through this, maybe stood in the way. And so I think I probably shortened my career by not being more proactive with the things I had going on. And to me, I just wanted to, there's a difference between, it's easy to play when you're hurting. If something affects the way you do something, like my hip and knee had hurt for like 2 years and it was fine. I didn't say anything until it started like affecting my accuracy, because there's no hiding it. Like there's like, when your brain tells you know how to do something, your body's doing something different due to injury.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
me. That's where it was very, very mentally challenging towards the end of my career. And I always tried to live. I had a hard time getting over. I'd always try to compare myself to when I was at my best.
Mm.
And the last like 2, 3 years of my career, I would say anything less than the best I'd ever done felt like a failure. And that wasn't very healthy mentally. Um, sometimes you just go into survival mode. You would be tough enough to get through it, but you put a lot of things to the side, and that stress just kind of eats away at you a little bit. And I mean, I still was very proud of the way I handled myself. Um, with humility, and tried to always do and say the right things. And I've worked my tail off to try to keep it going as long as I could. But probably when the last like couple of years of my career, like last 2 or 3, you're a little more sore when you get up. Um, you have to triple the amount of treatment you get. You feel there are more days where you feel like crap than when you feel good. Um, there's a young punter on the team who is doing something athletically that you don't think you can do anymore. Like the first time I ever said, I don't think I can do that. That's when I was like, oof, like a box jump. Like, oh, I got to warm up first. Like when I started having to say stuff like that, that's when I kind of knew. And then I had hip surgery, and I thought that in my mind, I was like, this is going to re-energize my career, rejuvenate, and it didn't. My last year, I played the Titans. I wasn't very good. I mean, I had some really good moments, but it was by far my worst season. And then that's kind of where I was like, I think I've done enough. I think I've done enough. Like it's when you've been good at something your whole life, it's very tough to suck.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt at the end of my career, my last year. Even though I still had some really good moments, but in my eyes, um, the physical toll and the mental toll was outweighing the benefits of playing, and it was pretty easy. And my body was telling me I was done too, so it was pretty easy decision to not play anymore after that 15th year.
Yeah, well, now you have such a bright future ahead. I mean, I know you have your master's and you're can continue to go forward. Tell me, what do you think what made you so successful? If you had to point out tangibles and intangibles, and are you going to use that in your transition to your next chapter?
Well, I think, I mean, I'm always going to use my confidence in myself and my work ethic to try to be successful. And I think that's something that I think confidence is key in any aspect of life. Um, it's I think it's natural to second guess it, but you also don't need to psych yourself out of an opportunity. And that's where it's tough when, going into a new chapter of life where, I'm whatever I do, I'm not going to be experienced. I'm not going to be in the top 1% until I work my way back up. So it's just starting back from the beginning, knowing that's going to take a lot of work and time and effort to be successful, and getting excited at the challenge of doing something new. It takes a while to get to, but you get to the stage where you get excited to try something new and have that inner belief in yourself. And as we all get older, I think we kind of want to help people a little bit. So that part of it's exciting as well.
All right, so I'll finish it up with this because what I was discovering and doing the research, and what I admired most was the self narrative that Steven always seemed to have. When I'm listening to you on these different podcasts and reading your story, it's like, and then you said it many times during this. It's like I always had it. I don't know what to tell you. I just always had it. I always felt like I could be the best anything that I did. For the younger athlete that's listening to this, and they don't even need to be that younger athlete, but maybe they're 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, athletic minded, right? What advice would you give to them to help them get their narrative, get their inner story to the place where you've always had it? Like, how did you cultivate that story, and what advice would you give them on how to get their story to that level of confidence?
Well, I think that's a great question. I mean, everyone is wired differently. I mean, some people are intense, some people are laid back. Um, my personal opinion is what you're doing when people aren't looking is what matters the most. I've, coaching some of these kids in high school and stuff, like some of these kids are more worried about their ranking or getting a clip on Instagram than they are actually winning the game. So I would just encourage any kind of athlete to, to work in the shadows, work like that's where you get your most growth. Um, Everything doesn't have to be a show. And I know that I'm talking about my confidence here, but that's not something I go around telling people like, hey, I think I'm the best. Like, to me, I think you got to believe it, but not always say it. It's not like hey, I'm better than you. You don't need to, your words aren't going to prove how good you are. I think I tell my kids this all the time. Like, you don't have to tell people you're good. When you're good, people will tell you that you're good. I
Mm,
think you just have to, if you believe it and you're willing to work hard enough to achieve it, people will see it and tell you one day. If
mm.
that's probably the simplest way I could do it. Just going out and telling somebody, hey, I'm the best kid in my class, or I'm the best kid on my team. It doesn't do it. When people start telling you that you're the best, I feel like that's when you are. So believe it, but you don't have to like believe it, say it, write it down, but you don't have to go around telling everybody, because that to me is just kind of like an insecurity.
Love it. Stephen, you are pretty good, and you're one of the best that ever did it. I'm excited for your next chapter. Grateful for our connection through JD. I look forward to the future of us having conversations. Is there anything you'd like to leave listeners off with on Grateful and Full of Greatness here?
No, I mean, this was fun. I love talking about this stuff. I mean, I might not be right all the time. Um, I just know that any high achieving, high pressure job has its moments, its ups and downs. But when you put a lot into it, it's the reward is worth it, especially after you struggle. And I don't I don't want anybody who puts it all into something to be defined by their worst moment. So I would just encourage people to always find some kind of gratitude and lesson and learn something from the tough times, instead of letting it snowball into, oh crap, it's taken over my life. Like, there's always better days ahead. There's always a chance to get that kick at the end of the last Super Bowl if you just keep believing and keep working hard at it.
Right? You cannot create your own opportunities. It's one of the top things that I've taken away. I'm sure that I'm going to have you back on. I know it. I can feel it. I have a gnosis in my bones that you're going to be back on here when you are a top 1%er on that next chapter of yours. And I look forward to that day. Thanks again, Stephen, for coming on. I
Appreciate it, Mark.
appreciate it. Loved it.